giving them a mark of anywhere from NA for not applicable to excellent, which is the best mark you can get. So it's either excellent, it's well, it's good, it's below average, or it's horrible. And they think that as long as they're doing average, that's all right. But it's not all right. Because if you know the process, you should be able to do the process the way the name is implied in the process. You should be able to do the process in a great fashion because it's called the great process. Our process as believers is a great process. It's salvation. And the way that we share the good news and the way that we make a difference in people's lives is through actually interacting with them and talking to them. But far too many of us choose to live below the level that God has called us to live at. But the Bible says weary not in well doing. It don't say weary not in good doing. Good is good, but God has called us to be great. And to be great, we've got to live our lives well. We've got to live our lives in a way that our worship lines up with our activity, that our words line up with our living, that our lives line up with our witness. In order to do that, we've got to be in a constant state of examining ourselves, examining every word that we say, examining every action that we take, examining every moment of our lives. Because can I let you know a little secret? Like my representatives at work that I observe, I have an overseer that's observing me. The same overseer that's observing you. And in the final analysis, the Bible tells us it's appointed to every individual once to die, and after death comes what? The judgment. After death comes that one-on-one that we all have to go through. And unlike the one-on-ones that I do with my representatives, this one-on-one has two questions. What have you done with my son? And what have you done with what I've given you? And the key thing that I've learned as a leader is that when we ask questions, we're not asking the question because we don't know the answer. It's very much the opposite. We're asking the question because we already know the answer. We want to know if you understand the answer, or here's a word again, or if you have the proper perspective by which the answer was derived. Because if we have the proper perspective by which to give God the answer that we know he desires to hear, we'll be in a constant state of examining ourselves. We'll be in a constant state of being mindful of what we say. We'll be in a constant state of being mindful of how we act and what we do and how we minister to people, how we genuinely help folk. We're not helping people to broadcast it. Well, look what I did over here for this person. Look at that one over there, what I did. We're doing it to give God glory. We're not out bragging about, I prayed for 100 people this week. No, the Bible tells us that if we worship and honor our Father in secret in our prayer life, he will then reward us openly. Pressure is designed to be introspective. It's designed to make sure that we purposely position ourselves underneath the brunt of the weight that comes with the understanding and the proper perspective that this grinding that I'm going through, this pressure that I'm going through, it pales in comparison, like the word says in our paraphrase, it pales in comparison to the joy and the glory that I'm going to have in the end times. God, I might be uncomfortable now, and my neck by me getting broken seemingly in the spirit now, but God, when you get done with me, like the songwriter wrote, when God gets through with me, we're going to come forth as something. We're going to come forth pure like gold. We're going to come forth unflawed. We're going to come forth unhindered from being all that God has called us to be. We got to realize that the pressure is involuntary. We got to realize that it's designed to be introspective and make us think. But here's the payoff. Because the introspective nature is the price that you got to pay. But the last characteristic that pressure has is that it's an investment. It comes with a promise in our lives. It being involuntary let us know that pressure comes with the package of salvation. It being introspective lets us know that pressure is a price we've got to pay to grow. But the investment reminds us that pressure comes with a promise. And it goes back to what the running back said. Pressure does one of two things. It either bursts pipes or it creates diamonds. His perspective was he was a diamond in the rough. That's my perspective for us as believers. We're diamonds in the rough. Our numerical age has nothing to do with what God is doing in us. That has everything to do with the perspective that we carry and how we desire God to move through us. Look at what the verse says. It says, "Weary not in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap if you faint not." In due season you shall reap if you faint not. Those three words, in due season, those are the payoff words for us. That's the promise for us as it pertains to pressure. Pressure has a start point, but pressure also has an ending point, and there's a payoff after it. I tell my sons all the time, the difference between spent money and invested money is that spent money, you're getting your pleasure right then and there. There's nothing else to come. But when you invest, it might hurt for that money to come out of your paycheck to go into your 401k, or to come out of your savings to go into that stock market account. And you may cry many days when you see those stocks plummet like they did one day last week. But the payoff is there's always, always, always a return on your investment. That's why you invest. You invest so that when you're not able to physically work anymore, you have something to live off of as a result of your work. It's the fruit of your labor. The work that I'm doing now, as monies are going into my 401k, as money's going into my ESPP, as money's going into this and going into that and going into the third, and I might gripe right now, God, why is all this money coming out? But in 30 years, when I'm retired and I'm not working anymore, I will still have a means to be maintained. And if it's done properly, to be maintained at a higher level than I'm being maintained at now. And it's not about the natural wealth. This is about the promise that comes with maintaining the proper perspective in the pressure. The pressures that come with work. The pressures that come with a career. The pressures that come with juggling life and family and ministry. The pressures that come with all those things pale in comparison to the three words that linger in everything. In due season. Weary not in well-doing. Because in due season, you'll reap if you faint not. Paul had to remind the Galatian church, you all don't have all the answers. As leaders, you have to speak a clear message, a sound message, a relevant message, a message that lines up with your living, because people are watching you. And if people are watching you, God is watching you. And because God is watching you, he's checking to see if you're sending people down the right path or if you're manipulating them for your purposes. He knows our hearts. God knows our hearts. He knows the perspective in which we're looking at what we're doing, and he's writing it all down. So that when due season comes, we've got to make an account for what we've done. If we've not even made any investment, we can't look to see anything there. But if we've made the proper investment, if we've done what we've been called to do, if we've made a difference and sought to live our lives not getting tired, but understanding that no one told us that the road would be easy, but our perspective is that God didn't bring us this far to leave us now, we'll have the reward at the end. When we're speaking the truth in love, when we're letting people know the real deal, not only with our words, but with our actions. Never once did I say that our lives would be flawless. But the word says that our lives will be perfect, which means it's mature enough to be able to show our flaws and show the flaws in relation to how God can take that mess and turn it into a message, can take the test and turn it into a testimony, can take that point of us being victims and turn us into victors, giving us the victory through him. So when we look at everything that's going on, when we look at everything that's happening in the world, when we look at the plight that we have, when we look at everything that's happening, when we look at the collective voices riding saying, who's going to speak up? We should be like Isaiah when the call went out. Who should go and who should we send? We should be, here am I, send me, I'll go. We should be praising and thanking God for the opportunity to delve into this level and degree of pressure, knowing that God will never put us into a situation that his grace will not bring us out of. that victory is still ours because it's in him that we still live, that we still move, that we still have our being, that these things have to happen the way they have to happen, but